All right, folks, welcome on back for another fantastic edition of our Traders Talk Workshop. I got four eyes right here. Josh Levitan. I'll finally get my new pair of glasses, at least. Monday, October 28th, shortly after noontime here at Eastern. Great to have all of our students and members alike here joining us inside our live trading room. Gillis, Yehuda, Phil, Philip. We got Lynn and Randy, Kathleen, Lee, Margaret, Iqbal. I know a few of us are actually still commuting just back from the CTU Trader Summit, perhaps just got back at least from the last few days. So first and foremost, for the 10, I think 11 students that had joined us live in Westbury, New York from last week, it was so much fun. And it was so nice to meet you all, or at least see you again if you're a returning member. Alex, Roseanne, got a number of us here. Guy just joining us for the first time here in chat. And otherwise, the lessons that we had learned in our in-person summit just last week certainly could have been applied just a moment ago to this stock Glue. Now, really briefly, if you're just joining us on social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, etc., shout out Lori K joining us on YouTube today. But if you're joining us on YouTube, such as Lori, feel free to hit the subscribe or follow button right here at Cyber Trading U. We always like to post that right there on the lower left. At the end of this workshop on the upper left, just join our live trading room. Just scan that QR code with your phone, with your camera. You have the scrolling blue banner at the bottom right there as well that could take it to that same page. But otherwise, the principles that we had learned at the in-person summit just last week, the Trader Summit there, definitely could have been applied here. And it's the same principles, essentially. Peel back the curtain here. You can't reinvent the wheel. The same principles that we had learned in our in-person summit last week, we actually just went over in our phase 2 class. Now we're going to really hammer that home, though, here, because our discussion in class actually just earlier this morning was built around psychology. It was built around discipline, psychology, and just doing your best to follow a step-by-step process. So truth be told, I mean, in our other classes that we teach, phases 1, 2, and 3 of our classes, we really go over the X's and O's, the meat and potatoes of what we look for within taking a trade. So we know the stock is moving right now. It actually just reopened up off of a volatility haul. So I will just mention, if you're in this trade right now, Chuck, Dennis, Abdul, Wendy, any of us here live, I want you to focus on your money, on your trade. I'm going to go back on this move, though. This is what we do in Traders Talk. We're going to go back on why this stock made the exact move in which it had made. I took zero action on this stock today. I had no trades on this stock. I ended up jumping in on the fund trade from earlier today. Got in on Robinhood. And then others I'm in on the long term here. Wolf, this is actually my only day trade I'm in on right now, WULF. Otherwise, these three are swing trades for right now, Rigetti, Irene, and IBIT. Let's go over Glue, though. Glue, the stock had made a big pop early in pre-market off of some sort of news. For anyone that just is curious about the news, at least here, break open your old Benzinga Pro. All right, so they announced a global license agreement with a company to announce T and B cell modulating, blah, 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 blah. So sounds like a good headline. They receive $150 million upfront payment, eligible for additional payments on top. So, all right, that sounds good. 150 million. We've seen larger deals, larger contracts. We've seen smaller deals. So, for a cheap, low float, low volume stock like this, no surprise it did make a big move up early in pre-market there. Question is, can it keep going? Most stocks that pop in pre-market off of news like this just typically dump right back down. What was the one from earlier today? Yehuda, you wrote it in the chat board actually in our live class, and I saw it there. I think it was AMIX. I think it was AMIX. Was that it? Look at this thing. Look at the freaking mess. So, it ended up pushing up a little bit after here prior to the opening bell, but you don't want to be on the top of the roller coaster looking down, right? Easy to say that here, but you could have said that on PHUN, which I did trade in pre-market here this morning. But to at least get back to the Glue, obviously, same could have happened there, and easy to say it did once the market did open up. But we're going to go over this trade at least to begin here. So the process that we go over for this trade is the same exact process that we teach in our classes. It's the same exact process that we go through on any one stock. So for all of us here live, I want everyone here to answer this question. Kathleen, Brad, Stephen, Michael, George, got Phil, Philip, we got Gillis, all of us here live. Abdul, shout out to Abdul, actually joined us last week. What common set of price levels for a cheaper stock like this is more likely to find the iceberg orders? What common set of price levels for a cheaper stock like this is more likely to find the big icebergs? 50-cent levels and whole numbers, right? So you could right away just say 650, 750, etc. I mean, don't focus as much on this one price axis, but just that's a general sentiment for like any 5, 6, $7 stock. I would say the same answer: 50-cent levels and whole numbers. So, we're more prone to find icebergs there. It's just always our North Star when it comes to kind of assuming where the orders are. But this is where we actually need to look on Bookmap, look on the order book, and see where these orders really were. Maybe, there was a larger resistance at 7 than there was at 650. Maybe there was a larger resistance at 650 than there was 7. Maybe there was a new order, not really at one of these price levels, but just at a different one, maybe 736 or some crap like that. So we always need to confirm with Bookmap. All right, we got Bookmap here. Where do we have the dark orange lines going across the page? Dark orange, dark red lines going across the page. This could be one of our longtime students, if I'm not mistaken here. Potentially here. Gary M. from Calgary. You have a bunch of students up north and certainly from Calgary, Alberta, Canada. But otherwise, Gary M., we had a longtime student from a little while back. If that is him, then Gary, great to see you on YouTube here, my friend. We were actually just talking about you in great light, by the way. Leda, one of our longtime students, that brought you up. And I was like, oh my God, Gary. So if that is you, my friend, that would be pretty nice. But what do we got? Where do we have our big icebergs here? Where are our big orange and red lines here on this heat map? Bunch of us saying 7, right? And this does stick out because in terms of what we know, stock popped. We know it broke over 7 already. We know it's way over 7 at this point, right? So this is probably the one that catches your eyes first, actually. It's out there for a little while, since 8:30 in the morning almost. It's about 26,000 shares out there on the ask. That's resistance, absolutely. To complement that, I'd probably say this year too, about like at 687, that both of them together create resistance. Just do a little drawing here. Give me a quick sec. Draw a line at 7. I'll draw a line here just as like a smaller complementary level. But then all the way down here, right? I think everyone sees this all the way at the bottom. 575. Sam and Gillis all right in that 575. And that's 51,000 shares out there. So how did these levels play out as key resistance, support, entry, exit levels on the stock, right? That's kind of what we're going to be addressing in just a moment. Now, otherwise, the only other thing I would kind of, look at, think about here, it might be the potential buying and volume off of 650-ish, 640, but really here 650, and certainly here up a little bit more even. But it's just to say the more it can peak above that area, it should look to pop and run over 7. So that's essentially what I'd be watching there. Now, market opens up. Again, we know it kind of shakes around and then breaks out. When the market opens up, we're waiting the first 3 to 5 minutes, essentially, before we're jumping into a trade. So again, in hindsight, easy to say, but right after the first 5 minutes, it finished its consolidation. It broke out, right? This became a great trade to take, seemingly off of 650, 50-cent level, and where we had that little volume buildup just before. When the market opens up, though, for any of my students that are more in the phase 2 class with me here, what are we looking at once the market opens? When the market opens up at 9:30 on Bookmap in particular and on time and sales, there's something that I'm always harping on, something I'm always kind of looking for. And certainly right when the market opens up, the first 5 minutes, we just have the time to plot it, right? Try and see what this looks like here and lower the size, but the opening bell print, this big dot, this big ball, it's right at 640, $6.40. It's about a 54,000 share print that gets filled on the tape right when the market opens. So, how I teach this in our actual classes is, okay, well, we all agreed that 7 was resistance. That's a pretty big iceberg level here for about 27, 28,000. Hey, I'm not trying to toss a curveball question everyone. What's a larger size? 27,000 here or 53, 54,000, right? Not a trick question. If we're calling this big, then how important should we call 640? This isn't even just the open price for the just random day here that it's trading. Today's a Monday. This is the weekly open price too. Think about that. So is it going to continue long term? Is it going to be a great swing trade from here? Probably not, at least not right away. It'll probably pull back down eventually. But But that's where otherwise for today, that becomes a key breakout level. So ultimately, once it had kind of cleared above 640, then really 650, it made a big move shortly after, right? So that's essentially what you were looking for on this trade to begin. Now, a couple questions from up top at first here. Just didn't want to miss out. Definition of a low float. We don't give a number. There's some people that give you a number. That's like kind of their filter. Just the lower the float, the crazier it is likely to be. And the more risky it is, certainly if it's not going to make that big move in your direction. We know all of these eventually come back down pretty hard, right? Haven't checked in on IBRX recently here. How is that doing? For as much as that popped Friday, came back down pretty hard. For as much as it popped today, failed to make higher lows. It ended up pulling back. So, we know these stocks eventually come back down. So that's where just like the lower the float it is, the crazier. Again, I don't like giving a number because I don't want it to be like very fixed. But, we'll trade stocks with a 10 million share float, 5 million share float. Not to say that like that's high. That's low. That's pretty damn low. But the higher the float, the larger the gas tank it may potentially have. That's how you want to think of it as. But otherwise, the next question that came in here from the chat here. So from Iqbal, he was asking, how do you see that in Book Viewer, NASDAQ Book Viewer? Is that what you're referring to, Iqbal? I'm assuming that's what he's referring to. I just want him to say yes. Because on NASDAQ Book Viewer, like level 3, that doesn't show up. That's actually direct to time and sales. That's not on the order book. That is just a market print that gets filled. It's called the market open print, market close print. TradeStation may even label it as such under the conditions on their time and sales. But basically, it's not shown on level 3. It's shown on level 4 because, well, Bookmap is not just showing you the limit orders that are out there on the book, but they're showing you the prints that are getting filled too. They're showing you time and sales painted onto this heat map as well by showing you these dots. That's where, like, if I just make this one, it's like you get everything, all sorts of crap. So I don't like having as much of that. But otherwise, even I'll just slip this in here. You could actually have a time and sales direct to Bookmap right here. So you could see it literally on time and sales via Bookmap. I just don't use this here as much because you got too much on the screen here, I think. So, for as much as I teach you what I use at a Bookmap, there's actually so much more that you could actually poke at, look at here. You don't need to use everything. I just want you to know that. But otherwise, I'll go over that more in the Bookmap-based classes that we offer in phases 1 and 2. But essentially, it ended up starting to make its better move this morning, the glue trade, off its opening print and off that first 50-cent incremental here off of 650. Even on the pullback, look, even on the pullback, broke under over again. Oh my God, it gave you everything that you wanted, even if you had missed the first pop. But from there, this stock ended up making essentially the same move that we always see out of stocks that run. The more times that it tests and nips at a big level, especially in a smaller concentration, it's more prone for it to continue or break out. So let's see what happened here. It looks like it was pretty shaky around $7 bucks. This is 750. It looks like it even played easier off of. Looks like it was a little easier off 750 than $7. 8, you think eventually, for as much as this goes up and up and up and up, we just went over this in phase 2, reversal time around 10:15, 10:30. So it's not a surprise that it loses momentum around this time and gets chippy around 8. That's not really too surprising. But I'm kind of looking here like, all right, well, 7 could have been nicer. Why was 7 not as good of a level? Was there a better level than 7 right there? I don't know. We'll find out. So, what happened? I guess this could explain it. We had about 26,000 shares here on the ask at $7 right before the open. Looks like it got larger for a moment. It became 28, 29,000 again. But then over time, that order pulled. So you'd figure, okay, that's good for continuation. There's not as much selling pressure for the stock to try and break through, right? But that means if there's less big volume off a price, then that isn't really a reliable big level. You know what I mean? Like, again, the 50-cent level whole number thing is a strong assumption. And I would have assumed it here. I would have assumed $7. But this just literally decreases in size since the market open here. It goes like 37, 28, 6,000. What the heck? So, yeah, it looks like there's no selling pressure there that would be good if the stock just runs. If the stock just pops and rips right away, then perfect. And in the long haul, it does. It like obviously keeps going up. But if you're wondering why did this stock have such a tough time off of $7, it's because it wasn't a good level. It wasn't a good level at all as like an entry. And you would assume for it to be, but it just isn't really one. Notice actually here on the CVP column here where my cursor is, CVP, right? Go down. There's actually more volume buildup right here off of like 668. By the time this ends up shaking around 7 here for about 5 minutes, looks like only then it actually has as much volume traded off that price as 668 did here. 668 is like a random price. Like, I don't know why that one weird price level, right? There's actually even as much volume here at 710 as there is 7. That should not be the case. You should see a lot more volume off that whole number if there's going to be a reliable price to enter from there. So you'd figure the more times it breaks over it, it should run. That's the natural thought process behind it, and it did. Perhaps it needed a kick in the ass because it wasn't up until there was a 68, nearly 69,000 share buy order that showed up. Once that buying pressure just showed up, thing immediately took off. So that's a pretty good explanation there as to why it was stalling out so much, because there wasn't as much buying pressure here off of 7. You'd figure if that's the case, then the stock may look to stall out. Well, right over here, once this new buy order showed up to jack up the buying pressure again, thing completely went nuts, right? So this was a nice trade, Glue. A nice trade. It obviously continued to break out. So let's actually go over this even once more as far as what happened recently here. So kind of playing in part with our whole thought behind 50-cent levels and whole numbers. 850, it kind of loosely speaking topped off underneath here. Didn't touch it. Didn't like show any sort of interest at 850 at first. But essentially, the more this ended up nipping into this level in a smaller time span, in a smaller time frame, it's more prone for it to continue. Would I be expecting this? Would I be kicking my feet back, guaranteeing that it's going to go up to 1050 right here? No. In terms of the practicality of more times in a smaller time span, yes, absolutely. So that's where I'll tell you, yeah, there could be trades to take at any point throughout the given day. But this is something that is critical. This is a must. Need to keep seeing the stock nip and test resistance more times, and not in a larger time span, but in a smaller one. So it took a little bit longer. The more times it tested it, went up against it. It's like a pressure cooker. Eventually it's going to blow, right? So now at this point, it's up 118% today. We've seen stocks go up 500% in one day, 1,000% in one day, right? So for as much as it's already moved, it's still even possible for this to try and keep going up. But again, we can't judge that as far as knowing exactly and perfectly. So, when the foot's taken off the gas pedal for this stock, it's going to go in reverse for you. It's not just going to stall out. So we have our next resistance. It's at 11. If it can't clear over 11, it's more prone to eventually fall off. Yehuda says Glue Wedbush raised their price target from 11 to 15. It's nice to hear. It's nice to hear. We've seen stocks all the time have price targets and raised from these like firms, go from like $5 price target now to 20. And to the naked eye or to the uneducated trader, they'd be like, "Oh shit, I'm going to double my profit instantly here." You can't hold your breath waiting for that price target. But if it's something more outlandish, if it's some like crazy target, it obviously draws more eyes to the stock. Like, oh, what's the stock? Why are they giving such a bullish target? So, unless if it's like JP Morgan, Wedbush is pretty significant. Maybe like a Cantor Fitzgerald, State Street, any of these larger names, if they provide a larger target, then I'll take it more seriously. But you still don't want to hold your breath kind of waiting for that move to happen. All right, so at least that's the glue trade. That's basically what had happened a moment ago. Actually, really quick, might I say, this is a new level right now, talking about these print levels here. So this is what happens off of a halt. We go over this also in the phase 2 classes a lot more. 75,000 share print ball dot came up at 1065. So certainly more now than ever, that is going to play out as a key level if this wants to continue. Well, it's got to hold over it as support. 1065. And that was what time? 1207 is when it reopened. So pretty much, yeah, right here. It hasn't been doing a good job breaking higher and then holding over it. It's been breaking over it, but then pulling back, same candle or the candle after. So it looks like this might be your best chance right here at seeing this try and hold support right now over that halt print. But again, this is where we say, like, literally right now, this has got to make its big move shortly after. If it's not going to play nice and hold over this area to pop higher again, then this will eventually crap out. It's going to be a huge pullback back down towards like $9. So, it's more 50-50. It definitely could keep going up, but just this will be pretty critical. All right. So glue is one stock I didn't get my hands on, at least earlier today. I want to go over the DJT. DJT will be a stock I'm going to go over in just a moment because there's a day trade that I'm in on right now. I got 3 swing trades from me on this account right now, which is pretty rare because I'm more just doing Bitcoin itself and doing Bitcoin futures contracts. And I also have my options account, which has BITX calls, BITO calls. But trying to go. But I have 3 swing trades I'm working with right now. I got Rigetti, quantum computing company. I ended up calling this out last week. I was down maybe 1 day on it and it popped back up. Irene, I was underwater for like 1 or 2 days on it, actually by a decent amount, and then it pushed back up. This is more of like a hold on type of deal. This is going with Bitcoin at this point right now. Rising tide lifts all boats. IBIT, HODL. We're going to hold on to that for dear life. Now, Wolf, though. Wolf, let me ask our students here, Yehuda, Iqbal, Lynn, and Randy, Margaret, Chris, did anyone jump in on this Wolf trade, if not even from earlier, but just a moment ago? We had called this out off of $7, and it's not just saying like, oh, we typed the stock in the chat board. It's like I point blank wrote, Wolf is a good setup off of 7, or Wolf from 7 is a good setup, but it needs to make higher highs soon. That is the game plan, right? For anyone on YouTube right now, just again, scan that QR code, join us inside our live trading room, get the full brunt of our commentary and education otherwise. But at 11:46, I wrote that to you just earlier to all of our members. Wolf from 7 is a good setup, but it needs to make new highs soon. Let me ask our gold students and above. If you're a gold student or higher, gold, platinum, diamond, C2 level student, I definitely want you to answer this. At least looking back on this right now, as we're talking, I certainly hope it keeps going up. Why was this a good setup? Why was this a good setup? I want you to tell me why this was a good setup in your best, most detailed explanation. I'm not looking for just one word. So if you can put a small amount of mustard on this one, a small amount of effort, if you don't mind, just tell me in your best explanation why I was adamant that this was a good setup at the time, specifically 11:46. 11:46, I wrote that. So not a minute earlier, not a minute later, 11:46. It's okay to be wrong. Feel free to just, let me know what your best thought is right here. Right at that point. What do we got? Give everyone a quick minute to write. No sweat if you're typing right now. Checking out YouTube right now. Got Lori, got Noureddin. Great to see you here from France. There you go. I was going to guess that. I know someone by the name of Nasruddin. So Nasruddin from France and Noureddin, I believe. So great to have you, Noureddin from France. Friend saying, what was the spread at the open on which one? The glue? Gary, going back to Gary here on on the glue trade. He was asking this. What's the spread on glue? So at the open, I can probably give you an exact answer. It was jumping around probably. It was like 5 cents here, 3 cents there, 8 cents the next minute. It was fluctuating. So that I could definitely tell you. He says, I see the spreads all over the place on glue. Is that something you pay attention to before pulling the trigger? Absolutely. And yes, if you see that right now, then that's the case from earlier. And that definitely kind of seconds my thought that I just mentioned before. All right, what do we got? Kathleen says under over. Yehuda says whole number and it was consolidating. Iqbal says clearing resistance. Lynn and Randy saying broke a higher level. Philip says agree under and then over. DJ says it dips and then over the key level. Gillis says it tested 7 twice in a short time. Glenn says it broke up from strong support. Roseanne says it broke 7 on the way up. And then Abdul says tight consolidation. So again, all of these answers are like adding up to basically like what happens here. So we focus on whole numbers, right? 50-cent levels, whole numbers here. $7 is a whole number. I would assume for there to be resistance there. Now, again, we need Bookmap to confirm that, at least early this morning here. I will show you. We had resistance at 7. It was at 697 here in pre-market. There was an order showing here virtually at $7. If it's 3 pennies off, then I'm going to honor that as like basically it. But again, right here at $7, you got 41,000 popping up right away. It broke over it. So let me ask us here, Glenn, Gillis, Abdul, Roseanne, all of us here in chat right now. When this stock is breaking over resistance, it's running. What type of pressure are we seeing? Are we seeing buying pressure at that time or selling pressure? Who's winning that battle? Buying, right? Buying. Buyers are winning that battle right there. Now, buyers were winning the battle right there, but unfortunately, it came back down. It tried to flip resistance into support right here. It did, and then it broke lower. And from there, it's had a really tough time breaking back over 7 and then running higher, right? So, just again, I always like to give you the full spectrum answer here, like the real truth of everything. Obviously, we just conducted our class. We conducted our class from 10:30 to 11:30, right? So pretty much from this time span, I was not going to be taking a trade myself. I was not Josh the trader. I was teaching a class. You were with me. Most of my students were at least with me in that class. As soon as 11:30 finished up, I hopped out of class. I'm looking at the market. So I turned over to this trade and it was right here, just lingering under 7. Let me ask you, was this stock breaking lower lows? Was this stock breaking lower lows? Was this stock tanking? Was this stock, dropping off from 7 greatly? Is it game over? No. It ain't over till the lady sings. We don't want to say the fat lady. It ain't over till the lady sings, right? So we'll say that here. Yeah, it's showing higher lows still, if not maybe just flattening out as support. It's not making lower lows. So what happens if this can keep testing resistance, testing resistance, testing resistance, testing resistance, testing resistance, testing? The tongue is not tied right now. Testing resistance. We keep going. The more times it does it in a smaller time frame, I'd feel bullish. So not only that, look at the CVP spike. Look at where my cursor is. CVP spike right here at 7. Big green, showing a good amount of green here. So that's where I was even more bullish there compared to at least other moments. Maybe we had called it out earlier before class started, but I took my eyes off this stock for a little while. I was looking at other stuff with our students, going over trades from before, and obviously came back afterwards. So if this isn't breaking lower lows, it's basically like you're saying, so you're saying there's a chance, right? It's like the old girlfriend that will never get with you. It's like, so you're saying there's a chance, huh? So it's just that here it did give you that chance. Yeah, it jumped, it broke over 7. And I got in right over $7. This is my position currently. So I'm in from 702 right there. Oh, you can't. So anyone on webcast or on YouTube right now, sorry, I got my fat, ugly face here blocking the lower right. What can I do? So at least right here, 702, that's my entry price. It showed it right there on the chart, but that's where I've been in since. And now at this point, what's my game plan? What am I looking for on this move here? Well, this I did mention to one of our students actually earlier, Iqbal, who had chatted me just before, because he's like, hey, I didn't want to chase this thing. I'm not trying to chase. I said, I think that's a good idea. It's not good to chase. I wrote to him, 720 is the next level. So for me, this was the first peak, basically right around 720, but there was just before about a 45,000 share seller out there. It looks like they may have pulled. No, they got hit. No, sorry, they got hit. Yeah, they got hit. All right, so if it's not going to hold over 720 as an acting support level here, then I may look to just take the money and run, just take less of a profit. That's fine. I'm not like holding this as a swing trade personally. I'm already a little too exposed into crypto, Bitcoin, mining stocks, IBIT, you name it. So I don't need to swing trade this. It's going to be a good swing trade overall, though. Rising tide will lift all boats. But otherwise, this might be a good time for me to move my stuff up. Move my stop up here just in case. I don't want to go that low. I'll set it at 711. It's a little deeper than I want, but that's fine though, because it's still going to be a profit. Um, there's a stock actually I just jumped into a moment ago here. I could tell my order did get filled. The stock QS. Let me actually turn to this next, then we'll go to DJT. There's a lot of talk on DJT, obviously, with the election looming. That was actually going to be number 2 on my agenda here for this afternoon. So I actually want to get to that next. But a stock I just got filled on right now, I had a stop order out on. I guess if not before, then just a moment ago it filled me. But QS. So earlier, I wrote this in our chat board just a moment ago here. I'm going to answer the question in the chat board in just a moment. But I said QS 180,000 share iceberg on the bid at 575. That was at 1149. Wrote that just earlier too. So why is that important? Well, I'd figure if we're talking about like 40,000, 45,000 as a big level, and granted every stock is different, but when I say 180,000, that should make you light up like a Christmas tree. So that was right at the price 575, wasn't it? All right. Well, it ended up breaking under the level right here, and it ended up staying under the level for a little while. So I waited, but it looks like just a moment ago, yeah, right here, I got my stop order filled. So to kind of answer that question from McBall, yeah, I placed a buy stop order. Placed a buy stop order right here. So only if it were to break over this 575 price would I have gotten in. So now I got to set my stop on this one now. Give me a quick moment here. I'll even try and move around here pretty quick. But otherwise, yeah, I'd probably want to set my stop. This is a cheaper stock too, thankfully, on good liquidity, good spread, good order book, good iceberg size out there if there's going to be one that pops up again. I'm basing my entry off the 180,000 that got filled here. So you know what? I'll set my stop on this one a little bit deeper because I know I could manage this one better, but at 568. All right. Looks like I'm in a lot of trades right now. Half of these are swing trades. So I just got to make sure I know which ones are the swings versus the days. But otherwise, Irene and IBIT are basically long term. Wolf is a day trade. And then Rigetti is going to be a swing trade. I'm going to close this one out by the end of this week or midway of this week. I'm not as like high strung on the company here, but I believe it's going to make a good move with the other quantum computing companies. So it was kind of just like more of a speculative play. But RGTI is going up, obviously, now. It looks like my speculation was correct. But this is one at least I'll hang on to probably until like Wednesday this week or something. QS pulling back. We'll shake back down. I'm not out of the doghouse just yet on this. Shook right back down here. So as long as it doesn't break lower for me, then I'm probably not going to get stopped out. But I'd rather see it solidify over 575 sooner than later. Seeing a 25,000 order on the S there isn't really too ideal for me right there, 573. So at least I have my stop set right below this marker here. You know, you should know pretty quickly if it's going to make proverbial big move shortly after or not. Looks like I'm finding out pretty soon, right? So I got my stop where it's set. If it holds and then goes back up again, I'll hang in one more time. But otherwise, it wouldn't shock me if that takes me out. All right, DJT. Let's go over DJT. This is a stock I also did not get any action in on here at the time. So let's see. I'm going to go over this one basically the same way that I did, just with the glue trade. So for a more expensive stock like this, I just focus more on whole number levels, not even the 50-cent levels. So 41, 42, 43, etc. Just a moment ago, I think it rounded off at 47. Let's see, 42. 43. There we go. All right. So 41, 43, not as big, but it's there. It's there. 45, thinking more abstract $5 incremental levels. So 40 and 45, and then up top above that would be 50. So those are even more important as whole numbers. But yeah, I would just say this is pretty straightforward. There's nothing else I'd be as keen to plot. The only thing here is just that there's a lot of volume dispersed at a lot of different prices. This is your sharpest point here, but there's a lot also around like 42.20-ish. There isn't one price on CVP that sticks out here. Nothing really that impresses me on the CVP column. Now, market opens up, two things happen. A, this pops. B, we have the opening print here too. So you know that will become a big level. You can just tell looking at the discrepancy now. Look at the difference. So this will always be a big level for us to work off of. It's just that, unfortunately, if you're looking for a trade on DJT, this takes off within the first 3 minutes and you don't get the first leg if you're actually trying to like wait. If you're using the first 5 minutes to your real advantage, then it's tough. You're not going to, catch a lot of this move here. Now, if this ends up pulling back down to 42.20, 42.11, if it were to have done that, that would have been a beautiful support level. Resistance here, flipping into support. Okay. Well, we know that our next level here is 43. It shows it right there, 57,000. After that's 44 bucks, 73,000 shares basically. So at this point, when it breaks over resistance, it's still early within the first 3 minutes, 5 minutes there. What this does, though, is this ends up flipping this into support, right? So if you're going to just try and take an entry, at least here at 934 and some change, you're on the latter end of that final 5 minutes. So, I always tell you, if there's a setup that you're very confident in, what does that mean? Well, seeing resistance after it gets broken over, stock ran. It's not just a little nip of the level and back down. It freaking flew. Resistance should flip into support. So you are genuinely looking for under and over. So it shakes around at once, but it goes under, over, gives you a good entry, right? It gives you a pretty slick entry right at that point. From there, your next real level is 45 or so, and it has a tough time doing that at least. So, at least ultimately it ended up building higher lows off the VWAP price back over 45. It went over. You would hope for a better move off of 47 here. I mean, even right now, this is actually approaching good resistance. It's a great setup. I would be hoping for a better reaction off of 47 here as it had off of 45, because this was actually pretty messy for a little while. A lot of volume built up here over time, but at first, you would have expected more sooner, and it just got choppy after a little while. Shook back down below 45 by a little margin, and I guess that's why it took some time again, but you're hoping for a cleaner move off of this orange line at 47 coming up, especially since it broke over it once already, again here. The more times it does it in a smaller time frame, I can't stress that enough. It's more prone for it to make that better reaction. So, whoops, what happened? So right here, it's testing it since 11:50. This was at 12:41 Eastern. So it's about 50 minutes. That's a lot of time in between tests right here. But from this test to this test, that's a much smaller time frame. So the more of this that we happen to see in the coming minutes, I'd feel that much more confident with looking to take. It didn't really offer you that too much here. Didn't really offer that here. Offer that too much here. First test was right here. It broke over it, but it crashed right back below it. Got nasty. So this is really your first genuine moment of trying to see that retest aspect. The more times it could do it in that smaller time frame. All right, QS still hanging in there for me. Wolf is actually doing pretty good, hanging in over 720-ish still. It's just trying to build higher lows. So now at this point on the Wolf stock, you got to see this look to build higher lows better off this iceberg. There was an iceberg here at 720. It should look to try and flip that resistance into support if it wants to go up more, if it wants to. Perhaps over time it will, like throughout this week and next week, etc. But if you want it today, for me, this is a day trade. If this is going to remain a day trade, it's got to be nicer off the 720, and then we'll see what happens. Let me ask our students here in chat: Grant, Lynn, and Randy, Michael, Stephen, Abdul, Roseanne, Chuck, all of us here. What's our next level after this line? After this line right here, what's our next level? Where could we assume for that there to be our next level after 720? What do we got? Pretty cheap stock, right? 750, 50-cent level, right? I mean, that's where we should assume it to be. It's a cheap stock, so I wouldn't really think that much wider than just 50-cent levels here. Now, is there going to be an orange line? Is there a massive resistance here? Not really. I mean, there is some order, 22,000, something there, and there could be more program trading involved by the time that order or that price gets tested. So I'm assuming that to be a level still. I mean, there happens to be some type of order that's been out there since earlier today, earlier in the morning session. So, I'm assuming for that to be a larger resistance coming up next if this could hold over 720 as a working support now. All right. All right. So I basically just covered everything, right? The DJT trade, the glue stock. We'll get back to glue coming off that halt, I think, just before. Went over the swing trades. We'll get to Bitcoin in just a moment to wrap up. Let's see. Wow, this thing took off, didn't it? So we were looking at it here. We said pretty much at this stage, it needs to make this better run. It did have one more shakedown, one more slam back down here, but it did get the job done. It didn't really break lower lows afterwards. And essentially what I wanted here did happen just over here. Made a nice run at first, so it could have been right place, wrong time when this slammed back down. Maybe they did this to take stops out. And then the same pattern happened at least where, just held right over that halt print level, that 1065. And then from there, just, so again, we're basing that off this 75,000 share block print, 1065. From there, it took a little while and it's not 100% guaranteed, but we did mention before the stock was up 112% or some shit like that. We've seen stocks up 500%, 1,000% in the last 2 weeks. So again, there's no guarantee it gets up that much, but you're telling me that it's impossible for this to go up more? I don't think anything is impossible, as we've learned here inside our live trading room, right? If you've never seen a stock up 100% before, I bet your mind was melted when it moved up 1,000% last week, right? So, it goes with saying that with higher lows, you could always see a higher high eventually. So, just wanted to mention that there. Chuck calling out SOUN. We're going to finish up traders talk in just a moment, but basically, nice stock, slow moving stock. And I think that this was a good swing trade candidate too, because I was looking at this like a week or two ago and I was right place, wrong time on it. I took a loss on some option calls. So, here it ended up building off of resistance, mainly off of like 550 ish. That's the price I was looking at there. Just right place, wrong time, or it was this candle, I think here, slam back down. And then today making a better move. But this has been kind of like a pressure cooker as well, waiting to blow. And it's a great day trade right now because it's at the highs. But as long as it could solidify over 550 as a support, I like this SOUN as a swing trade. I am in too much swing trades right now on top of my Bitcoin and all my crypto stuff. So, hey, I don't need to take everything I call out. Just you heard it from my mouth here and you heard it from Chuck's fingers right there too. It's a great setup here, this SOUN. Good day trade, good swing trade candidate there too. All right. Let's see. Anything else here to work with here? We got Bitcoin. We also want to talk about earnings going into the week, don't we? Right. Let me ask our students here in chat. Let me ask all of us on our YouTube stream right now. Also on X, you can follow us at Cyber Trading U. Also, CTU Josh. Feel free to hit me with the follow right there. CTU Josh as well on Twitter, on X. But let me ask all of our members here, Gary and Lori and Nordine, and all of our members inside our room. What stock are you most looking forward to for earnings going into this week? I mean, we got a bunch today and all Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. We got like Super Bowl week filled with earnings. So. Right, say to follow us on YouTube, follow us on Twitter, etc. I actually made a post just last night going over the earnings, just going into the week here. But I'll actually maximize that picture because there we go. If you know me, I'm a trading nerd, so I got my earnings calendar as my background here, as my desktop background. What do we got? Iqbal on Apple, Gillis on Amazon, Philip on Amazon, Bell on Apple. Sam on his NVIDIA next week. I think that is maybe a few weeks from now. NVIDIA from this screen, at least from this year's screen for this week, because we're not going to be talking about stocks in 3 weeks from now. That'll be 3 weeks from now. How about stocks this week? If you have a stock that you're interested in this week, I want you to answer. Chuck on AMD, Lee on AMD. All right, cool. So, keep in mind as far as how to trade a company off of earnings, we could go into Tesla because they had reported from last week and they ended up killing it. But otherwise, here's SOUN, this will pop, volume spike. That's looking nice. But, otherwise, though, it's to say, I don't like gambling before the earnings come out. Now, what does that mean? That means as a day trade. That means as a reckless hold without knowing what the company does, who their CEO is, what their financials are, what they've been up to. A swing trade's a swing trade, my friends. If you have faith in the company, then you are more confident in taking the pre-earnings, move, right? If you're expecting blowout earnings on Nvidia, you're going to try and jump in before earnings come out, right? It makes sense. As a day trade, how do we day trade these companies off of earnings? Rule number one: don't recklessly jump in before the earnings come out. How do I know this? I've learned my lessons the hard way, so hopefully you don't have to learn them the same way that I did. Let's just put it that way. So one tip with trading earnings, at least after they come out, is, and this is more opinion, this is more my flavor, and which is, all right, everyone has their own flavor, but I do appreciate companies that report earnings after the bell a lot more than companies that report earnings before the bell rings for the morning. A lot of times for the morning earnings to come out, I'll see them flush right back down. It could be more often a reversal play for the morning. Maybe they'll bounce later on. Maybe those could lead to bounces later on. That could be swing trades. But how do you day trade a company off of earnings? Typically, I like to filter out companies that are reporting earnings before the open, throw them to the wayside a bit. If they're on a great trend once the opening bell hits, once they're popping right away in the first few minutes, I'll try and look at it at that point and kind of get a grip on where my levels are. But otherwise, though, let's just kind of plan one out here. We got Ford after the bell today, and then tomorrow after the bell, we got Google and we got AMD. So let's basically go over those three right now, and we'll cover what levels to watch out for really in terms of where you might find strong volume buildups, where you might find big consolidation from the long-term chart. Load up AMD, I'm going to load up Google, going to load up Ford. All right now on my book map here. But let's actually start off with my favorite of those three. If you're an AMD person, well, yeah, I'm there with you. I love me some AMD, but I mean that just from my experience with holding on to them and day trading them. I do like their CEO. She's pretty sharp, Lisa Su. If you're a NVIDIA person, that's your cup of tea. Perfect. It's been doing a hell of a lot better than AMD has been, right? Well, hey, if you think that AMD is going to have good earnings here going into this week, then you're assuming for a larger move up. But where could we find stronger levels? Well, the answer is where we've seen stronger levels from the past. So I'm just going to plot a few without explanation, and I will explain afterwards. It's already over this one here at this stage, so I may as well delete that. I'll keep it up only just for saying that if AMD has bad earnings, then for as much as we had a little support bounce here, then it's probably going to act as resistance on the way down, whatever this is, 153.50-ish or so. But otherwise, this looks like the stronger level here during the early part of this calendar year when it was beginning to push back up. Go back to a weekly graph here as well. Well, this looks pretty good. The same exact level that we had, 162 and change. It looks like that was actually pretty good resistance dating back to, peak of 2021. So that's the same level that held here as support. That solidifies everything right there to me. Resistance from 2021 here into potential support. Had a few nice down wicks here, so that shows strength. It's holding under it right now, so that currently is a resistance. It was resistance here, and this could have been a great play at the time, but not as much momentum. It tried, it flipped it into support, bounced, but then it gapped down here afterwards. So maybe this could have been dropping with the market at the time, maybe some news with semiconductors that came out at the time, who knows. But it's just to say that if you're looking for a better reaction going up, then this has to become support again. So going into AMD earnings, at least, I would strongly consider that 162-ish to be a big level. and to see that flip into support. Once you get that, you should be getting a larger run up. Now, though, when you look at bookmap here, mixing this in, keep in mind we have all of the rest of the day today. We got tomorrow before AMD has their earnings. So there's going to be a lot more volume out there altogether. That's interesting. Okay. Well, 170 is not a shock. 170 is where you should have big resistance for like a more expensive stock like this. You would say the same at 160 at the $5 and $10 prices. So actually right here this morning, we had two different 70 plus thousand share sell orders here, and AMD ran over both of them. I mean, just flatlined over both of them right here. One, two, pop. And now what was the end reaction? Well, it did hold over it, or I'm sorry, it held under it. It came back down and rejected off of that price over time. Well, the more times that AMD can nip and test that area, the more buying pressure that we should be seeing off of that price, then it's bound to make that better reaction. So I don't know if it's going to make that reaction before the earnings come out. It's just that simply we've already had some buying interest so far today, aka this week, off of this area. So the more times that we see that going into the earnings, off the earnings, then we should be expecting that better move up. It's as simple as that. Now, after that 160, though, we got that 162 daily chart level, in lieu of 160. That also is a big level to watch out for. But what's interesting? Yeah, look at this. I mean, you had the 170 up top. You had 170 up top there, which is no surprise. That should be a strong assumption. But this has been out here since the market opened up. And, you figure out like whole numbers normally, but for a more expensive stock like this, I normally would just go $5 levels, 160, 165, 170. I would have assumed for this orange line to be at 165, not at 167. So that's where I'm telling you to definitely watch out for 167. As far as your next big resistance, so long as this order is out there on the book, then that should be a strong level going into the earnings or off the earnings. It might top off there perhaps on good reaction. That's always possible. You know what I mean? But otherwise, though, I'd say 160 is your first major resistance to work off of, especially with the volume that got filled earlier today. Again, we got another 24 plus hours until AMD reports. So if the market's flushed down, who knows what the hell may happen in the next 24 hours with Israel and Iran, right? I'm just saying, like, what happens if the markets drop off intermittently? Well, AMD is likely going to go with it. It's tough to swim upstream. So ultimately, it's just the thought that matters here in terms of expecting a stronger reaction up. Well, it needs to keep nipping and testing this resistance in a smaller time span, in a smaller time frame. So that's what you should be watching out for there on AMD. Really quick, Wolf is pulling back down a little bit. I have no problem getting stopped out. Decent little profit there, but it looks like that Wolf stock is failing to hold over that 720, right? It's lower high, pulling back. So I set my stop a little lower here, get clocked out like an 8 and 9 cent profit there. That's money. But we went over AMD just before. Let's go over Google now. I want to do Google next. Wow, crazy drop that this just had. Maybe earnings got leaked. Who knows? Big spike down here out of thin air. So let's actually just go right to Benzinga Pro to look at this here, and then we'll finish up basically Traders Talk. I apologize if you're interested in Ford. Got to jump onto a coaching call coming up here in just a moment. But Google. What happened here? Live on CNBC, Josh Brown announced trimmed alphabet position. So a lot of people in the downtown Josh Brown, not downtown Josh Levitan, but downtown Josh Brown at least here. He, I guess, sold off some of his alphabet position in advance of their earnings coming out, and that led to a pretty big spike. I guess that came out at 11 o'clock Eastern time. Oh, you know what? No. Pardon me. Hold up. No problem being wrong here and showing you that afterwards. But yeah, it looks like I was wrong. At 11:02, other news came out. Google and Facebook right here. Meta develops an AI search engine to lessen reliance on Google and Microsoft. Okay, so that should be a big pop for Meta. Not as much, at least it's holding higher lows. But otherwise for Google, yeah, who dominates the search engine industry, they're dropping off. Microsoft probably wouldn't be shaken up as much, but lower highs. They might break lower heading into the after. All right, so that's the news at least that came out there with Google. Why just dropped so suddenly, at least there. But at least with earnings coming out, let's just jump right to a daily chart here. Is this all we got? It already bounced off of 150, the same peak that AMD had back from 2021. Google had this peak here, and right off of 150 nearly here, it spiked down as support, where it broke over resistance and ran, resistance flip. That's easy to say now, but that's easy to say each and every week here in Traders Talk, isn't it? It's the same exact process that we cover. So, at least with that, it pushed up off of that 150-ish area. If you're expecting down earnings, then maybe that could be support again. I like this little area here. I got to tell you, a little consolidation buildup. It wasn't for like a really long amount of time, but roughly around 178, that is, it broke over it. I would have expected this resistance to flip into support, and it really didn't. It had like one moment, but then maybe earnings came out here and it got smacked. Gap down, it dropped off. So this should be resistance again. If this were to have good earnings, big pop off earnings, then this should definitely be resistance once more. Not a bad one. I like this one more though, but I'd say 174 and change. Not a bad little level here as support before it moved higher. So you'd want to see that happen again, have this act as support. But otherwise, this is your resistance here. It needs to basically break above again next. So even with that, I'd say right now you got resistance from the chart prior to that, pretty much here, right around what 168 and change, 169, dating back to late August, peaked and then dropped off sharp, pop and drop, held under it perfect. Today, it opened up basically right there and then tanked. So we'll call this a rejection, basically. Question is, how much more can this look to try and tease and break over this level? That's essentially what we're looking for in AMD. So for the Google trade here, the same is to be said. I mean, again, no shock. 170 big level. After that, 165, pretty big support level from earlier today. For right now, this needs to hold as support over time here because the more selling pressure that we happen to have, then it's bound to even continue to drop. So, if you're bullish on Google, eventually over time, you'd want to see this begin to slingshot back up, get closer to this 170 again, 120,000 share sell order out there on the ask. But the same is to be said. The more times it nips resistance and pokes at it, it's more prone for this to make the better pop. So with AMD, that price is basically off of here, 160-ish, 162, and then higher. And then for Google, it was basically off of 168, 170. All right, folks, we're going to finish up at least for right now. Market's still moving. We got a few more trades to work with here. And look what ended up, the time being, stopped me out. The Wolf trade just took me out right here finally. So nice profit. I had it while it lasted. You can't be perfect on the exit as long as you're pristine on the entry. That's what allowed me to at least feel pretty confident with this roaming up and move my stop up. All right, I made like 8 or 9 cents on it. I'll take it. Nice to have a base hit every now and then. So, with that, folks, hey, we're going to wrap up Traders Talk at least here. If you're following us on YouTube, social media, Facebook Live, LinkedIn, Twitter, X, etc., wherever you may reside, got a lot of chat today. So I appreciate you, Gary and Nordine and Lori and all of us otherwise right here at Cyber Trading U on Twitter, on YouTube especially. That's where we kind of hub all of our education videos. So follow us at Cyber Trading U. If you're following us on X, follow us there. Also CTU Josh. Feel free to hit me with a quick follow as well. Join us inside our live trading room. Scan that QR code on the top left. If you're not as fancy with your phone, with your camera, scan the QR code. Just go down to the scrolling blue banner on the bottom right there, www.ctu.co/trial, and we'll get you all signed up from there. Week-long trial to our live trading room. We'll be back later on today on air at 2:30 p.m. Eastern for all of our students there. But for Chuck, Lynn, and Randy, Margaret, Elena, got Sam, got Juliana, got Yehuda, all of us here just joining us. I'll talk to you all coming up in just a bit. Take care.